What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 3 best Stormweaver builds in Path of Exile 2. In this guide I will give you a quick overview of the best setups. Then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the mid game and end game. And then finally, we will go over the passive tree, attributes, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This setup's main playstyle is built around using the Tree Dragon Mask, which will allow our Lightning Warp to build up freeze in order to proc the cast on freeze with the Lightning Condiant, which will do massive amounts of AoE damage due to the natural shocked ground which is provided by our Lightning Warp, Eldritch Battery and many more to increase our damage and convert all of our shields to mana. Our build will be very mana hungry, but because of our setup we are going to be easily fixing this problem and increasing our AoE damage at the same time. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Sorceress, and our ascendancy is the Stormweaver. Then for the first skill we have the Lightning Warp with the support gems called the Overcharge, Lightning Exposure, Glacianation, Magnified Effect and Inspiration. Then second we got the Archmage with the Lightning Exposure. Then next we get the Ball Lightning with the Arcane Tempo, Unleash, Scatter Shot and Acceleration. Next we have the Lightning Condiant with the Elemental Focus, Ambush, Super Critical and Inevitable Critical. Next up we have the Conductivity with the Heightened Curse and the Persistence. Next we get the Mana Tempest with the Murderous Intent and Premeditation. Next we got Sigil of Power with no support gems. And finally for the last one we are using the Cast on Freeze with the Lightning Condiant, Impetus, Energy Retention and Shock Siphon. Most of the setup is structured around using the Lightning Warp and the Lightning Condiant to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node, and then go like this while grabbing all of these. So pure energy, rapid recharge, mana blessing and the dampening shield. Then next we wanna go to right and get both of these, as well as getting the alternating current. Then from here we now wanna circle back a little and keep going up until this point, and then now turn to left. Then next we keep going until we get to the keystone called the Mind Over Matter, and then also get most of these nodes called the Touch Arcane, All Natural and Desensitization. Next we wanna circle back a little to the point where we left off last time, and now again keep going until we get to the end, and now go to right. And then from here we can just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Strike twice, then second get the Constant Gale, then third now we want to get the Force of Will, and then finally for the last one we want the Scoring Winds. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then from here we circle back a little, and this time keep going up until we get to the second keystone called the Unstable Energies. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. But then on top of this we also have more passives. Which order you unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. So this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have the Delirium. Then third we have the bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand with the mana drain, and for bonus stats we want increased spell damage, max mana, more levels to lightning spells, increased mana regen and gain mana per every kill. Also, we get an offhand called the Advanced Crystal Focus with the Energy Shield, and for more we need increased spell damage, fire and cold resistance. Then for the helmet we have the 3 dragons with the evasion and energy shield. As I previously said, to achieve the highest DPS you will need this item, as his special ability is that now lightning damage from hits will contribute to the freeze, in order to proc our cast on freeze with the lightning condiant. At the start, this item of course is not required, but if you wanna deal insane amount of damage like you saw from the gameplay, then you will definitely wanna acquire it as soon as possible. Then for the chest we have the Expert's Hexer's Robe with the energy shield. And for more we want even more energy shield, max life, intelligence and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the plate belt with armor. And for more we want even more armor, max life, chaos and cold resistance. Getting just one item with a little bit of armor will help a lot with the damage mitigation. My damage taken from physical attacks went from 0 to 10% when I just equipped a 400 armor belt, so I definitely recommend it. Then for the gloves we got the advanced interested gloves with the energy shield. And for more we want even more energy shield, max mana, fire and lightning resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert feathered sandals with the energy shield. And for more we got increased movement speed, max mana, intelligence, fire and lightning resistance. Then for our first ring we got the sapphire ring with the cold resistance. And for more we need max mana, increased cast speed, intelligence and more percentage to all elemental resistances. While then on the second one we have the prismatic ring with the percentage to all elemental resistances. And for more we want max mana and life, increased cast speed, intelligence and even more percentage to all elemental resistances. And then finally for the amulet we got the everlasting gaze. This build is built around the mana as it scales the strongest for our DPS due to the archmage. So again, this amulet is the best in slot but not required. At the endgame, you might run into a mana problem if you're low geared, but if you wanna infinitely cast the lightning without even losing mana, then this is the item for you. No matter what gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And I will give you 2 rotations. So first of all, for mapping and weak enemies, we want to build our lightning warp to build freeze. So then we could proc our cast on freeze with the lightning condiant. And therefore our quick spammy rotation is just to use the lightning warp and the ball lightning, or perhaps the lightning condiant. And because of the cast on freeze buildup, we are going to be using just 1 or 2 skills, but at the same time activating even more in the background. And that is how we get so many projectiles at the same time. And then second, we get our boss rotation, which a lot of times can even do a one-shot. So this time we want to start our rotation by activating the power sigil, and then the mana tempest. And only then you want to use the lightning warp, and then from here again you can begin spamming with the lightning condiant and the conductivity curse. We wanted to place down our preparation skills and the lightning warp to have our shock ground activated, as the damage from the lightning condiant is very dependent on the amount of shock from our shocked ground. This setup's main playstyle is built around putting up a frost wall and then blasting the enemies with infinite amount of fireballs. Cold exposure in the combination with the fire skills is very incredibly OP in the endgame, so this build works amazing on big groups of enemies where we simply use 2 skill combo and cover our entire screen with the projectiles that explode and do massive amounts of damage. On top of this, we are going to be using nodes like the scoring winds, constant gale and many more to increase our cast speed and mana, so we could basically spam our frost walls and speed farm through every single content in the game. And then on top of this, for our defense we are going to be focusing on the energy shield and its recharge rate, so we could easily get over 15,000 shields and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the sorceress, and our ascendancy is the Stormweaver. Then for the first skill we have the fireball with the support gems called the Unleash, Scatter Shot, Vault Shards, Rising Tempest and the Control Destruction. Then second we get the Flame Wall with the Fortress, Persistence, Arcane Tempo and the Fire Mastery. Then next we get the Frost Wall with the Icicle, Spell Cascade and Glaciation. Then next we have the Frost Bomb with the Strip Away and Magnified Effect. Next up we have the Cast on Freeze with the Comet and Impetus. Next we got the Grim Feast with the Clarity. And finally, for the last one, we're using the Hypothermia with the Persistence and Heightened Curse. Most of the setup is structured around using the Frost Wall and the Fireballs to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node, and then take all of these three, so pure energy, rapid recharge and the dampening shield. Next up, let's go to the right and get this whole circle. Then now we want to go to the left side and get both of these as well, so the essence infusion and the exploit the elements. Then from here, let's keep continuing our way up top. And on our way we want to get the overexposure and the climate change. And then from here we go to the right and first get the physics fragmentation, and then also the thin ice. And then from here we want to go back all the way from where we began, and just unlock these defensive nodes in whatever order you prefer. Overall, there are two ways to approach spending points in the passive tree, so either way maximizing every single level and then continuously refunding your points, or perhaps just be a little bit less efficient, but focus on already the mid to end game build, which is exactly what we did. But in what way you do it is of course up to you, as long as you use the same exact path at your final version. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Scoring Winds, as it doubles the effectiveness of our exposure applied by the Frost Bomb, which then scales even further with the passive tree and the Strip Away support gem. Then second we get the Constant Gale for the 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regen rate. This build will often struggle with the mana, so any additional mana regeneration is always useful. Then next we get the Strike Twice, which now lets you apply 2 shock stacks to your enemies, and in combination with our fourth option, the Shaper of the Storms, your cold damage can now also apply shock. This unlocks a new way of scaling your damage by shocking and freezing the enemies at the same time, which makes this build very powerful in the late game. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the right side, and then get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then from here we circle back a little, and this time keep going up until we get a second keystone called the Unstable Energies. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this we have even more passives, which in order you want to unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses. And then on top we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our bridge setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Chimming Staff with the Schedule of Power, and for more we want increased cold damage, then also increased spell damage and plus levels of all spell skills. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the Energy Shield, and for bonus stats we need max Energy Shield, max mana, lightning resistance and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Expert Altar Robe with the Energy Shield, and for more we got the fastest start of the Energy Shield recharge. Then also the max energy shield, more to spirit and fire and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the linen belt with the increased mana flask recovery. And for more we want to go with the max mana and life, and cold and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the blue flame bracers with the armor and energy shield. And with them we also got the intelligence, fire and cold resistance. And 100% of our damage is now converted to cold. As I said previously, this is not required, as our build only uses the best of both worlds, so both the cold and fire damage, and it doesn't really matter if we 100% go into one or another, as long as we use the best skills that are associated with the element. So with that said, if you can't afford it or don't want to get the best in slot item, then you can go with any other similar gloves with a similar stats. Then for boots we are using the Expert Wrap Sandals with the Energy Shield, and for bonus stats we get increased movement speed, max life, lightning and fire resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance, and for more we got max life, cold and lightning resistance. While then on the second one we have the Sapphire Ring with the cold resistance, and for more we got max life, max mana and lightning resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Stellar Amulet with more to all attributes, and for more we need more to spirit, lightning and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our main rotation and the highest DPS combo is to first of all place down our Frost Bomb in the flame wall under the enemies. Then now use Hypothermia. Then afterwards use the Frost Wall on top of the targets. Then now shoot the fireballs towards the location where you place the Frost Wall, and then from here just maintain the flame wall and the exposure from the Frost Bomb. In a quick summary, what we basically want to do is place the frost with the flame wall to burn the enemy and buff our attacks. So then we use the hypothermia for more buffs, and then from here we just stun and immobilize the enemies with the frost wall, while at the same time spamming the fireballs until the enemy is dead. But to be honest, like you can see from the gameplay, on pretty weak enemies all you need to do is just spam the fireball in the combination of any other spell, and because of our setup they will not stand a single chance against us. This setup is super fun and has insane amount of lightning damage. Also, as you can see, it is one of the most visually impressive builds in the game, as the sorceress can paralyze and destroy monsters with a barrage of lightning. Our build has insane amount of AoV and great speed farming potential, by shredding through the maps and all the other endgame content with ease. All of these three skills, so the Archmage, the Lightning Incandescent and the Spark skills, together make up the bulk of our insane damage. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the sorceress has many tools to address this problem, and with optimized gear we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or gear to completely solve this issue. So if you want to fill out your entire screen with sparks of lightning and speed clear through the hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For the main class we have chosen the sorceress, and our ascendancy is the Stormweaver. And for our first skill we have the Spark, and we are going with the support gems such as the Pierce, Arcane Tempo, Acceleration, Persistence and Wild Shards. Then second we got the Lightning Incandescent with the Controlled Destruction, Elemental Focus, Considered Casting, Lightning Mastery and Execute. Then next we got the Orbs of Storm with Lightning Exposure, Strip Away, Conduction, Fount of Mana and Magnified Effect. Then next we have a Mana Tempest with Inspiration, Premeditation and Murderous Intent. Then next we have Conductivity with gems like the Hex Bloom and the Heightened Curse and Focus Curse. Then next we have the Enfeeble with the Curse Ground and Expands. Then next we have the Voltaic Mark with no gems. Then next we have the Archmage with also no gems selected. And finally for the last one we got the Mana Remnants with Clarity, Vitality and Cannibalism. Next up we have our passive skill tree. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node tabs, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach, and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell damage node and make our way like this, until we get the raw power and the Path of Storms. Then now we make our way all the way up here, and get this overexposure. Then from here we can circle back a little, and get the Arcane Blossom and then these 2 more nodes. Then now we make our way all the way up here until the top, then take the right like this, and get these 2 nodes, called the Power Conduction and the Pure Power. And now from here we can make our way all the way to the right side, and on our way we can pick up all of these nodes in no particular order. As soon as you unlock the Constant Gale Ascension, which gives us the Arcane Surge, then now we can invest our points into the left side. But until that point, just get everything on the right. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Constant Gale, then the Force of Will, then next up get the Strike twice, and then finally get the Scourging Winds node. To simplify my decision making so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the raw power, Path of Storms, Arcane Blossom and the Overexposure, as this will give us the biggest build upgrades to not only damage but mana as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more mana regen, more skill effect duration, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. As most importantly, because of the Archmage skill, the more mana we have, the more insane damage we can do. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand. And you don't have to, but if you can, then get some of these bonus stats like increased spell damage and lightning damage to attacks. Also, extra mana stat could be helpful as well. Then for the helmet we have the Coral Circlet with Energy Shield, and for the bonus stats get the maximum life, fire resistance and cold resistance. Then for the chest we have the Bone Raiment with energy shield, percentage increase to max energy shield and the fire and cold resistance. Then for the belt we have the Ornate Belt with reduced charm charges, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for the gloves we got the Jeweled Gloves with energy shield, and for the bonus stats get the maximum life, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the Feathered Sandals with energy shield, and for the bonus, at this time you 100% only want this, and it is as high movement speed as possible. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, and for the extras we want any other type of resistances like the lightning and etc. While on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and for the extras again we want more resistances of any type or the maximum energy shield. And then finally for the amulet we got the Azure Amulet with increased mana regeneration, and for the extras we have maximum energy shield. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon is the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. Specifically, the lightning damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize energy shield, maximum life, and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. We want to start our main rotation by first off activating the Archmage, which while active will give our non-channeling spells cost additional mana, but now in return we will deal extra lightning damage based on our DPS and our maximum mana. And then from here we can simply spam the Spark and the Orb of Storm, and this will fill our entire screen with the lightning that will destroy enemies in seconds. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation, and then use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific situation. If you ever run into the mana problem, then remember all the ways that I previously said on how we can increase it, and then also we can use the Mana Tempest and Mana Remnants to recover it even faster. And this might sound obvious, especially at the beginning when you might not have unlocked the Archmage skill, but if you run out of mana then just simply cast less skills and wait. You will be doing very high damage anyways, so casting fewer skills won't really impact the gameplay that much, but it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're under-geared or under-leveled.